So the phrase often uttered is that history has a way of repeating itself. Now, that's not 100% true, really. History and events, modern times when we look back, history more has a certain flow to it. Maybe some things repeat, but it's never really truly the same way. No event, even though it looks closely similar to another event that maybe happened later in history or even a different country at a different time, is the same thing. No two events in history were ever triggered by exactly the same thing or in exactly the same way, or events played out exactly the same way, but maybe things happened slightly different. And I think that really what we saw in America last week, I think Sam Cedar put it best. Sam Cedar said in his response to this, if his 50-year-old self time traveled back to now and said, hey, don't worry about it, this thing fizzles out in like 6 weeks, everything's going to be fine, then that would be to him relief. However, he's worried, I'm worried, and people in America should be absolutely worried about this, because this whole stop the steal is very, very reminiscent to what happened in Germany in 1918 with the infamous stab in the back myth. And if there really is a true warning from history, then it's not later events that happened in Germany in the 1930s. It's almost this event from 1918 that is the real warning. Because the worrying thing was just as in Germany, this was the start and the track of where fascism started to really take root in Germany and started the rot that eventually became, we all know what happened. So, before we jump into this article, please do remember to hit that like and share button, and of course down below there's a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link. I've always forgot what to say then. And a one-off donation link, and thank you very much to the people that do support me that way. So, on with this article. So this comes from, the New York Times. So, the title of the article is 1918 Germany has a warning for America. Hamburg, Germany. It may well be that Germans have a special inclination to panic at spectres from the past, and I admit this alarmism annoys me at times. Yet, watching President Trump's Stop the Steal campaign since Election Day, I can't help but see a parallel to one of the most dreadful episodes from German history. 100 years ago, amid the implosions of Imperial Germany, powerful conservatives who led the country into the war refused to accept that they had lost. Their denial gave birth to arguably the most potent and dangerous political lie of the 20th century. It's a long German word, but I'm not sure how you pronounce it. I'll have a go. The Deutschen Saldegrad, or the stab in the back myth. Its core claim was that Imperial Germany never lost World War I. Defeat, its proponents said, was declared but not warranted. It was a conspiracy, a con, a capitulation, a grave betrayal that forever stained the nation. That claim was palpably false. It didn't matter. Among a sizable number of Germans, it stirred resentment, humiliation, and anger. And one figure who knew best how to exploit their frustration was Adolf Hitler. Don't get me wrong, this is not about comparing Mr. Trump to Hitler, which would be absurd, but the stab in the back myth provides a warning. It's tempting to dismiss Mr. Trump's irrational claim that the election was rigged as laughable. The least the last convulsion of his reign, or just a cynical bid to heighten the market value for a TV personality he might once again intend to become, especially as he appears to be giving up on his efforts to overturn the election result. But that would be a grave error. Instead, the campaign should be seen as what it is, an attempt to elevate "they stole it" to the level of legend, perhaps seeding for future social polarization and devastation on a scale America has never seen. In 1918, Germany was staring defeat in the face. The entry of the United States into the war a year before and the subsequent successful counterattacks by British and French forces left German forces completely demoralized. Navy sailors went on strike. They had no appetite to be butchered in a hopeless yet supposedly holy mission for Kaiser Wilhelm and his loyal aristocrats who made up the Supreme Army Command. A starving population joined the strikes and demands for a republic grew. On the 9th of November 1918, Wilhelm abdicated, and 2 days later, the army leaders signed the armistice. It was too much to bear for many. Military officers, monarchs, and right-wingers spread the myth that it had not been for political sabotage by social democrats and the Jews back home, the army would have never have given in. The deceit found willing supporters. I'm Unstigat, I think that's how you say it. Undefeated on the battlefield. It was the slogan with which returning soldiers were greeted. Newspapers, postcards depicted German soldiers being stabbed in the back by either evil figures carrying the red flag of socialism or grossly characterized Jews. By the time the Treaty of Versailles was signed the following year, the myth was already well established. The harsh conditions imposed by the Allies, including painful reparation payments, burnished a sense of betrayal. It was especially irreconcilable with Germany. In just a couple of years, they had gone from one of the world's most respected nations to its biggest loser. The startling aspect about this whole stabbing the back myth is this. It did not grow weaker after 1918, but stronger. In the face of humiliation or unable or just unwilling to cope with the truth, many Germans embarked on a disastrous self-delusion. The nation had been betrayed, but its honour and greatness could never be lost, and those without a sense of national duty and righteousness, the left, and even the elected government of the new republic, could never be legitimized custodians of the country. In this way, the myth was not just the sharp edge that drove the Weimar Republic apart. It was also the heart at the Nazi propaganda, the instrument of justifying violence against its opponents. The key to Hitler's success was that by 1933, a considerable part of the German electorate had put the idea emboldened in myth, the honour, the greatness, and national pride above democracy. The Germans were so worn down by the lost war, unemployment, and international humiliation that they fell right into the prey and the promises of a Führer, who cracked down hard on anyone perceived as traitors, leftists, and above all Jews. For the stab in the back myth, it was central to it all. When Hitler became Chancellor on January the 30th of 1933, the Nazi newspaper, the Volkskrieger Beitrag, I think that's how you say it, wrote of the irrepressible pride that goes through the millions who fought so long ago to undo the shame of the 9th of November 1918. Germany's first democracy fell. Without a basic consensus built on a shared reality, society split into groups of ardent, uncompromising partisans, and in an atmosphere of mistrust and paranoia, the notion that dissenters were threats to the nation steadily took hold. And alarmingly, that seems to be exactly what is happening in the United States. According to a Pew Research Center, 98% of Trump supporters believe that Joe Biden's presidency would do lasting harm to the US, while 90% of Biden supporters think the reverse. And while the question of the news media, of which news media to trust, has long split America, now even the largely unmoderated Twitter is regarded as partisan. Since the election, millions of Trump supporters have installed an alternative social media app, Parler, and the filter bubbles are turning into filter networks. In such a landscape of social fragmentation, Mr. Trump's baseless accusations about electoral fraud could do serious harm. A staggering 88% of Trump voters believe that the election result is illegitimate. And according to a YouGov poll, a myth of betrayal and injustice is well underway. It took another war and decades of reprisal for the stab in the back myth to be exposed as a disastrous, fatal fallacy. If it has any worth today, it is as a lesson, and it can teach other nations, first among them, beware the beginnings. And I completely agree with that. I worry that what we saw last week might only be the beginning of potentially worse things to come. And I've been saying this all the time throughout this channel, even back when Trump got elected. The person who could do the most damage, don't get me wrong, Trump has done lots of damage to the American system, not as physical damage, but he's done psychological damage to the system, and that can be really hard to repair. And the worrying thing is who comes after. In the failed coup attempt that Hitler took part in, he was there at that march, and that's what gave rise to his writings and thrust him into political stardom. The worrying thing is that among that crowd could be the person who is the real damager, who could cause some real damage. We don't know who it could be. They might have been in that crowd that day, they might not have been. But the worrying thing is the person who comes after Trump, who follows those exact same tendencies. And the problem is the rot is already starting to take place. In Pennsylvania, where the incumbent Republican clearly lost, he is refusing to concede defeat. And under their rules, the Democratic guy who won the vote, even the court said, you have won the vote, cannot be sworn in until that guy refuses to concede. And it's a tactic straight out of Trump's playbook. And the worrying thing is that rot could go deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's when you see, these people claimed for years that Obama was a dictator and was going to do all these terrible things. He never did any of it, the stuff they claimed. But now, here they are, trying to overthrow and overturn a democratically, positioned electorate, election. And it's just, it really is unbelievable. It completely defies all words and logic and reason. And, I've seen a lot of people ask this question. How do we undo the damage? I don't know. I really wish I could tell you, but I don't know the answer. So, as always, thanks for watching. Please do hit that like and share button. And of course, if you'd like to support the channel a different way, there are links down below to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link. And thank you very much for all those people who do support me that way. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next time.